As I said earlier, that to draw a diagram, first we have to decide whether we are drawing the diagram for a lender or a borrower. So now the effect of an increase in R, of which I am going to draw the diagram, will be for a lender. Okay, so it will be drawn for a lender. So lender's diagram. Now, before going into all of that, let's just say it again that even with this, M1 by P1 and M2 by P2, this is an equilibrium. It is always available. And because of this, in the diagram, our first task is to mention this. Okay. Now, keeping in mind that I am drawing a lender's diagram. So how we are going to do that? Okay. So the first budget line that we are going to take, make it a bit flatter. Now, as we said that we are going to draw a lender's diagram. So initial C1 must be, let's say C1 0, it will be less than M1 by P1. So like the other diagram, we are going to take M1 by P1 close to the left side, sorry, right side. Okay. So let's take our M1 by P1 here. Or let's make it a bit, let's take it a bit inside. Okay. But anyways, okay, so let's take M1 by P1 here. And obviously then M2 by P2 will be here. Okay. All right. Now the first important point that we have to note is that if R increases, budget line becomes steeper. But this M1 by P1 and M2 by P2 is still available. So steeper, but rotate, but will rotate on M1 by P1, comma M2 by P2. So what I'm saying is that in standard consumer behavior, the budget line, if the budget line becomes steeper, then we fix this point and we decrease the intercept on the C1 axis. But here, since this point is always available, the budget line is going to rotate and become steeper, but maintaining this point. So let's take a steeper budget line. Okay, so this is our steeper budget line. So this is kind of L1 and this is our L2, just for convenience's sake. Okay, so this is our first budget line and this is our second budget line. Now, lender. So obviously initial C1 naught will be inside and so will be, and accordingly we'll get C2 naught. Okay, so let us take the initial IC I naught. Okay, so this point A, it becomes the initial equilibrium point. Okay. So what do we get here? At A, we get C1 naught, comma C2 naught. Now we have to mention obviously the initial interest rate, right? So we'll mention this by writing the value at this point, and we'll write it WR naught by 1 plus R naught into P1. So our initial R is R naught. So then we have assumed that R increased and it became R equal to R1. Okay. So in this budget line, in L2, okay, in L2, this point becomes WR1 by P1 into 1 plus R1. Okay, take a detailed look at this. This is our initial IC. A is our initial equilibrium. The consumption is at C1 naught, C2 naught. Since C1 naught is less than M1 by P1, lender, okay, then the budget line rotates based on this point because it is always available. The steeper budget line L2 comes with a higher interest rate WR1 by P1 into 1 plus R1. The reason is very simple. The slope of a budget line is P1 into 1 plus R by P2, right? This is our, sorry, I have to put a minus here. So this is our DC to DC one. So R increases, budget line becomes steeper. Okay. Now, let's say, so where will be the equilibrium? Let's say we take it, okay, we take it here. Even on the, for this diagram, we'll make the point even on the left of C1 naught. So we'll take the new IC touching here, okay? We need this. So the new one becomes C11 and C12. Okay? So this is our final equilibrium. So it was initial, it is final. So R increases, becomes R, goes from R naught to R1, then we get D, where C11 and C21. As I said that in this diagram we have chosen to take C11 on the left of C1 naught, right? And there is a reason of doing that. We will come to that later. Why this kind of a setup? Why C11 less than C1 naught? Okay. Now, from A to D, this is our price effect. This is our price effect from A to D. So naturally, we'll be interested in breaking it up between income effect and substitution effect. And we'll go for a Hicksian substitution effect. Okay. So we are going for Hicksian substitution. All right. Okay. So now I'm going to erase this part. So what do we need for that? We just need a budget line parallel to L2. So let it be this one. Okay. And the point we are getting here is this B. Okay. And we're not marking, we're just marking. Okay. We're not writing anything here. All right. So old budget line, steeper budget line, and then a parallel budget line, right? So what is the Hicksian substitution here? From A to B. Now, what do we notice when we move from A to B? We notice that first period consumption C1 reduces and C2 naught goes higher, right? In this direction, this is our point, right? So C1 reduces and C2 increases. C1 reduces and C2 increases. Now that is very simple. That is very simple in the sense that R has increased. So that means my opportunity cost of consuming more or consuming in the first period has increased, right? The more I consume in first period, I'm going to lose my interest earning, my interest income. So because of that, I have reduced C1 and I have increased C2. Okay. So as we see that substitution effect is always negative, and it works here also. The opportunity cost or the price of choosing more in period 1 is the interest rate foregone, right? So let me just write this a bit. So what I'm saying is that the price of consuming more in period 1, this has increased, right? So C1 reduces, C2 increases. All right, so this is my substitution effect. Now we'll come to the next part, which is our income effect. So what about income effect? So what about income effect? Let me just erase this part of it. Okay. All right. So now income. See, the individual was a lender, right? So if R increases for that individual, the interest return on lending increases. So I have more income or more money in second period. So definitely income effect will cause an increase in both C1 and C2. That's what you see. So substitution effect brings the person in this direction, and then income effect goes in this direction. Again here, substitution effect increases C2. Sorry, here is a symbolic mistake. C2, 1. Yeah. So substitution effect take from this point to this point, right? And then income effect further increases it. Okay. So why both C1 and C2 increases? Because with higher R, lender is richer, right? The lender is richer now. Okay. Now just to keep it as general as possible, you see, in consumer behavior, we have always seen that we actually do not know whether in the end substitution effect is going to dominate income effect, or income effect is going to dominate substitution effect. That we do not know. So if we bring in that insight here, what it says is that, see, in summary, what we have observed is this. In summary, what we have observed for a lender is this. Substitution effect increases savings. Income effect decreases savings, right? And the answer is quite clear. If substitution effect is more powerful than income effect, then we will observe an overall increase in savings. And if substitution effect is being dominated by income effect, then we will see overall decrease in savings. Okay. Now, we are going to extend this component of it. Why? There is a reason. You see, lender means what? Lender means that savings is positive. That's what lender means. Now, in this case, in the first case, if this happens, the lender remains the lender, and it's fine. But in this case, in the second case, when savings is reducing, the question that we are going to ask is this: is the lender going to become a borrower? I'm going to say it again. Since in this case, substitution effect dominated by income effect, savings is being reduced, will the lender who had a positive saving will reduce savings in such an extent that the lender will become borrower? So lender becomes borrower. That's the question we are asking here now. Okay, I'm just going to erase this part also because now it plays no role at all. Okay. Now the answer to this question, is no. Even when income effect dominates substitution effect, the lender will never become a borrower. Okay, no. And why not? Why not? To analyze this, we are going to take help of what we have studied much earlier, and that is verb. So we are going to answer or to justify this, we are going to take help of weak axiom of revealed preference. Weak axiom of revealed preference. See, when first look at this, let us see it in a bit detail. See, so this L1, this line was the initial budget line, and given this initial budget line, all the points on the budget line and below the budget line was available to the consumer, and given that the consumer chose this point, right? Now, when the budget line with an increase in R becomes steeper, the budget line becomes this L2. Right? Okay. Now, with this L2, the common area, okay, the common area between L2 and L1, that is the area which is available in both cases. So what we are trying to say is that this area, all right, so it does not complicate this diagram more. Okay, so kind of what I'm saying is that this area was available earlier, right? So this area was available. Okay, so that means the consumer is not going to choose anything in this area. Now, that's a different point. About borrowing, we can exclude that this area, right? Why? Because you see, with the new budget line, okay, sorry, with the old budget line, this area was available. And now with the new budget line, this area is unavailable. So you may think that, okay, there can be optimum in this range, but no, that's why we are using VARP, that the common area between L2 and L1 and all the area that was available during the initial time, okay, let's apply VARP in a very systematic manner. What VARP says is, if we have chosen A, okay, then we cannot go to choose any other thing which was available then, because we have chosen A when all this is available. This was available, right, in the first case. And within that scenario, I have chosen A. So now my choice will definitely go on the left side, okay? It will go up, not in this direction. So because of that, the borrower, the lender will never become a borrower. He will always move in this direction. All right. So let me say it again, and this is a rule. Remember this result always. So when the interest rate goes up, all right, for a lender, the savings may decrease, but it will never decrease to such an extent that the lender becomes borrower. And the reason is this, that the points that the consumer will be choosing becoming a borrower was already available in the first case when he chose to be a lender. Okay. Now we are going to draw the borrower's diagram, and what our common sense says in an analogous manner is what we will see is that when the interest rate goes up, the borrower will never borrow more. Okay, so let's go to the borrower's diagram. All right. So now we'll move on to the borrower's diagram. Again, so this guy is a borrower. So that means we are going to draw the always available point much on the left side. That's right. And here we will see that there can be an extra case other than what we are going to show now. Okay. So as earlier, let's take a flatter budget line and take M1 by P1 much on the left side. Okay, so we have ample space here. Now, the initial point will take a bit further. So let's say this is our C1 naught and this is our C2 naught. Okay. So now R increases from R naught to R1, right? Okay. Let me just draw the initial budget line, right? Without the, sorry, the IC, because without it, it looks bad. Okay. Mm. Okay. Okay, let's keep it like that. And draw a better IC yourself. Anyways. Okay. Okay. Now the budget line will rotate, taking this point, right? Okay. Let's say this is our new budget line. So this is our old budget line and this is our new budget line. Now let's check D here. Okay. So this is our D. C1 1 and C2 1. All right. So now to go for Hicksian substitution, we need a budget line which is parallel to this and tangent to this IC. Okay. Now I have to do it again because this is better. Okay. So this becomes our A, this becomes our D, and this becomes our B. All right. So from A to D, this is our price effect. From A to B, this is our substitution effect. And from B to D, this is our income effect. Now, In case of substitution effect, it remains the same, right? As we can see here, that with substitution, C1 reduces and C2 increases. So if I just take a point, C1 reduces and C2 increases. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. Now, with income effect, what is happening? With income effect, R has increased. The person is a borrower, right? So borrower will have a reduced income, right? Why? Because the borrower's interest payment becomes higher, so the income will reduce. So definitely, you will choose a bundle which is on the lower side. So C11 here reduces further, and the C2 here, compared to substitution effect, it goes a bit higher, obviously. But always you can draw a diagram where both is reducing. So in case of C21, here it is increasing, but if you look at the choice, since income reduces, the bundle overall it reduces. Okay, C1 reduces further, and here in this diagram C1 reduces a lot. Now that is quite natural, right? Because substitution effect gives the buyer, gives the consumer an incentive to increase C. Again, rate of interest increases, so with reduced income, the consumer will definitely go for a bundle, a lower bundle. Okay. Now, from this, we can have or we can try to have the possible cases that we discussed in lenders. So here our question is this. Now first, let us state the result that we have got. So if R increases, it will never induce to borrow more, right? So on this we agree that the borrowing is not going to increase. But now the question is that when the borrower is reducing the bundle, obviously the even the negative saving, okay, or the amount of dissave, right, the amount of let's say debt, if we say so, the amount of debt is decreasing, right? The amount of debt is decreasing. So in a way, savings is increasing. Now here we can have two cases. Okay, so what I'm saying is that when savings is increased, a borrower may remain a borrower, obviously with lesser debt, but a borrower may also become a lender, right? A borrower may also become a lender. So that is something that is different from the earlier case. So I'm saying it again. If R increases, a lender will always become a lender, remain a lender, but a borrower may remain a borrower with lesser debt or may become a lender. Okay. Now, the alternative scenario is quite easy to understand. Okay. That if I take the a decrease in R, right? So if I take a decrease in R, what will happen? The lender's value of or the income will reduce, right? But for the borrower, a decrease in R is good. So we can analogously, we can write a result here that, so now we are talking about decrease in R. So we can have another result that, and these results are actually important, that if R reduces, borrower remains a borrower. Borrower remains a borrower. So borrower will be actually happy, right? So this is analogous to the first case of lenders. But for lender, if R reduces, then this kind of scenario occurs, that the lender may remain a lender with some reduced lending, or if R reduces further, the lender, who knows, may decide to become a borrower. Okay. All right. Now there is a very small thing that I'll now talk about, is the savings function that we get here. Okay. Through all of this discussion, and which is obviously at par with our common sense. Okay. And this is, and it is this: if rate of interest is very low, there is an incentive to become a borrower. And if rate of interest is increasing, then there is an incentive to become a lender. So that means if we are going to build a relation between savings and interest rate, savings and interest rate, it will look like this. So here borrow, right? Here borrow, and here save, or rather in our diagram, as I say, saving. And here R. So the diagram will look like this. Okay. So this will be our savings function. So beyond some R, when R is too low, I'll prefer to become a borrower. And when R is too high, I'll become a saver. And because of this reason, when R increases, a lender remains a lender, but a borrower is undecided. And when R decreases, a borrower remains a borrower, but the lender is undecided. Okay.